Good morning. I'm glad you were able to join us. This is so exciting and a little scary.
Yes.
My name is Jeff Jerome, and this is my colleague,
Sherry Weaver.
and the two of us, hopefully, will give you an hour of entertainment and education about the last hours of H.L. Mencken. Now, before we begin, I just want to point out to you that we lost our videographer. She had a family emergency and she's out of the state. So we are doing all of this ourselves, the recording, the lights, the sound, everything. So just bear with us as we move through the hour. Now, if you do make any comments, and we hope you do, please tell us where you are from. I think it would be nice to know if we have someone from California, France, wherever
Yes, there's
joining
Mencken
us.
fans all across the country and the world.
Now, one more thing. If you should fall asleep, and I hope you don't, watching this, it will be on YouTube. I can't give you an exact time, but this will be posted on YouTube so you can catch it at a more reasonable hour.
And also they can always go back on the H.L. Mencken House page through the previous post, and this video will still be there to watch at another hour.
Exactly. And when you watch it, be sure and click like, and we would greatly appreciate that.
Okay, I'm not sure if Jeff mentioned, but we are both board members for the Society to Preserve H.L. Mencken's Legacy, and here we are in the H.L. Mencken House.
And it's very exciting. This has never been done before.
Nope.
I mean, this new live Facebook, because of COVID, everyone seems to be getting into the act, and sometimes they succeed and other times they don't. And at least they're trying, so
We'll see how this goes.
we'll see how this goes. And even if it doesn't go well, and it will, next year will be better because we learn from our mistakes. And next year, or I shouldn't even say next year, because we are planning some events for this year.
Yes.
They will be great. And those of you that have been following the Mencken Minutes, for example, you can see a gradual improvement because we have a videographer that helps us, and we're feeling more relaxed in talking about Mencken. And so we have a lot of exciting things coming up for this year.
I'm just really excited to bring more of Mencken to the fans out there. With the pandemic, the museum has limited hours, appointment only. Folks aren't going out, but we do know that you fans are out there, and we want to bring as much of this house and about H.L. Mencken's legacy to you right there at your home.
Exactly. And it seems like every week we get one or two inquiries about, are you open yet?
Yeah.
Oh, no, not yet. By appointment only. But we have great plans for 2021, and we hope to see you in person sometime this year. So I think
we could get started. We have this lovely setup.
Yes, and you're probably wondering, okay, they got drinks, they have snacks. Well, that's not for us. So just be patient. We'll get around to that as we move along. So what we're going to do first of all is for the first third of the evening or the morning, we're going to talk a little bit about the house, about H.L. Mencken, setting the stage, so to speak.
Yes.
And during the hour, we may repeat ourselves, and we do that on purpose, because we are going to be in two rooms tonight. This room and Mencken's study. They both figure in his last hours. Now,
this is a pretty popular room.
Yeah.
Mencken entertained in it a lot. You probably can't see the burgundy couch in the background, but a lot of his socializing friends, colleagues came into this room, as well as this used to be the dining room,
right,
as you can see.
Exactly. So we are not Mencken scholars. So if we say something that's incorrect, we do apologize, and we'll probably hear about it later. But we're going to have fun. Oh, that sounds awful. We're talking about his death, and we're going to have fun.
Yes, this is the anniversary of his death.
Yes.
But we do want to bring more of Mencken, the person. This house was a major part of him, and that's the camaraderie we want to share with you. Not necessarily about his works and a bio on him, but he spent a lot of time in this home.
So let's start off with the timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, let's talk about the house, the Mencken family, and who lived here, who died here.
Right, this house, I believe it was 1853. Might have been 83. I might be getting my facts wrong.
I think it was 83.
83,
Yes.
okay. Was purchased by August Mencken Sr. for, I guess, back then it was a good amount of money, but now a measly $2,900. And Henry's dad, his brother, his uncle rather, Henry's uncle, purchased the house next door, and the two gentlemen both ran a successful cigar business together. They were the first families in this house when it was built. This is the Italianate row house style, and they lived here their entire lives. Henry was here from age 3 until 75 when he died, with the exception of the 5 years that he was married to Sarah Hart.
This has been the Mencken house.
Yes,
the Mencken home.
It is the Mencken house.
It is the Mencken house and home. No other family has lived here. So when you really sit here, when it's all quiet, and you take this all in,
You're absorbing.
I don't know how to describe it. It's not weird or strange. It's just that Mencken.
Yeah, every element of this house. Right now it's sort of decorated in the 1940s version of when he was here. Because obviously the house underwent a lot of changes in decor as the boys grew up to grown men. But yeah, everything from the wallpaper, the furnishings, the very eclectic artifacts and things here, the beautiful furniture, everything just oozes Mencken. As a matter of fact, and I think later on in the program, Jeff has a very interesting story to talk about the basement.
Why don't we talk about that now? Those of you that have been following our Facebook page know about this. And I think we should talk about it now because we're talking about the family always living here. In the basement, since the renovation, they have pipes, air conditioning, vents all over the place. And I was just being nosy. I was just looking at the walls, not for anything particular. And in the back of the basement, under this huge vent, I saw the letter A, and then a space, M-E-N-C-K, and the E-N wore off, August Mencken. And I thought, look at that. And
it's amazing because we've been in this house for
Yes,
quite some time.
a lot of people.
It's just now being discovered.
And I think because it was right under that pipe. Now, I got very excited, and I'll tell you why. Because as a child, when I was growing up in Highlandtown, my brother and I would play in the basement. And I wrote my name on the wall. There was a brick wall, but there was a portion of it that had plaster on it. So my father was a painter, so I thought, I'll use a paintbrush and some of his paint, and I put, Jeffrey. But the funny thing is, the last 2 letters, I couldn't have space for, just like downstairs. And when my father found out, he wasn't too happy. He didn't think it was cute. My mom thought it was cute, but I ruined a can of paint, and he was very upset. But the point is,
I think they call that graffiti now.
Yeah, well, they call that graffiti. But the point is, I did the same thing as a child that August Mencken did.
I mean, 3 young boys and a sister, but 3 young boys in this house. You can imagine
You
all
can
of
see
the
them in the
shenanigans.
basement, running around, playing games, and August going, I'm going to put my name on the wall. And it's something else that brings life to the house, because here's something that a child did.
And it's still here after all these years.
After all these years, it is still here. And every time I'm here, I take a flashlight and I'm in the basement looking behind pipes, looking for other
There had to
graffiti.
be more letters than that. I mean,
You know.
with the boys here, they used to play, run and rip in the yard, slide down the banister, doing little boy things.
Yes,
This
yes.
is a beautiful home. Mencken's family, obviously, they were well off, and they had very nice things, but that didn't stop the kids from being kids.
Right. I mean, they had turtles as pets.
Oh yes.
And two Tessies, two little dogs.
The one is buried in the garden or in the backyard. If you ever visit the Mencken house, you do have to take a tour of the garden. The turtle, it's an interesting story about the turtle. When Tessie died, Mencken, he wanted another pet. Believe it or not, Mencken has a softer side. He likes pets. He likes a lot of things, art, music, everything. But he got a turtle. I forgot where he got it from, but he gave the turtle a male name. It was like General something. And a couple weeks later, he noticed the turtle was laying eggs. So, to his surprise, and he wound up renaming the turtle, what's her name? Mary Baker G. Eddy. And if you Google her or know who she is, this is pretty interesting for Mencken. She was the founder of Christian Scientist Church. So I wonder why Mencken chose that, but I think he was still in shock about the turtle being a girl.
Yeah. So they raised turtles in the backyard.
And they had a horse as
pony.
well.
A pony.
Pony, yes.
A pony.
What's his name? Frank the Pony.
Yes.
One of these windows he used to poke his head through, and there's a story about Frank eating ice cream off the table. So they have pictures. If you look on the digital archives or at the Pratt, they have images of Frank the Pony.
So we tend to look at historical figures as adults and what they did when they were adults, but when you look back with Mencken, we know so much about Mencken. Maybe too much, I don't know, it's mind-boggling. But we realize that as a child, very precocious, very intelligent, and had a lot of different varied interests for a young child. And that he was a rascal sometimes, as little boys are.
On his 8th birthday, I believe, he received a toy printing press. I didn't know they had toy printing presses. And it is said and it believed that at that point, that's what made him interested in journalism. So it might have all started from that toy printing press.
And those things were heavy. They were made with metal and wood, and it's really amazing. So
it's just amazing of all the things that affected him later in life. I think that also is the same year that the family got the piano, which we have one of the pianos. We have a Tonk piano in the other room that was Mencken's, and that's when he also started enjoying music, which that traveled through for the rest of his life.
Yeah. So moving on. I mean, we could talk about his childhood for forever. I would like to read an excerpt from a essay written by Marion Elizabeth Rogers about the significance of H.L. Mencken, and I've condensed this because of the time element, but she makes some very good points. So here we go. What is the significance of Henry Louis Mencken? Why should we care about this man or visit his house? Mention Mencken's name and some regard him with unease. Others enjoy his wit and follow his quotes on Twitter or on iPhone. In Europe, South America, and Asia, his writing continues to be quoted and translated into 7 foreign languages, probably more now. He is taught in classrooms and his books have been recently reissued. Mencken was born in Baltimore in 1880 and died in 1956, and he was once called the most powerful man in America. That's a title for you. As a journalist, writer, and editor, he covered such diverse subjects as politics, language, and literature, and in the process helped shape our view of the American scene. Mencken was neither a conservative nor liberal. You might call him a libertarian. His provocative battles against censorship and prohibition, his coverage of the Scopes monkey trial, women's rights, and presidential political conventions were all widely quoted. His style of writing was famous for its clarity, cadence, and humor. He did have a sense of
I think
humor.
we would add honesty as well.
Yes, I think so. Brutal honesty. The running theme throughout all of his books, newspaper, and magazine writing was his passionate defense of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights for free speech and individual liberty. Like Mark Twain, another one of our great American writers, H.L. Mencken was not without controversy. Both writers saw reality clearly. Both thought common sense, wit, and humor were the best weapons to tear down hypocrisy, cowardice, and the suppression of individual rights and free speech. The issues of race and rights remain. Mencken's skill with words makes his work uniquely American, refreshingly current, and more than 100 years later, eternally readable. Don't forget that in person, H.L. Mencken was also fun to be with. He enjoyed good food, good music, and good conversation. In these rooms, he played the piano, brewed homemade beer in the basement, tended to the garden, his beloved garden.
Yes.
He really loved that place, and built its brick wall. From here, he walked to the corner shop to buy toys and candies for his niece, to Johns Hopkins Hospital to visit sick friends, or to his office at the Baltimore Sun, where he took on the entire country.
I think that's an interesting component, mentioning about going to the store to buy candy for his niece. There are so many stories, sometimes people stereotype or get the image of Mencken as being a grouch, a cynic, a mean person, but there are many stories about him, picking out a special silver baby rattle for someone's new baby, or walking to the store just to get candy, or giving the children, the neighborhood kids, candy in the backyard. So he definitely had some very nice qualities about him.
That all came to an end, a crashing end, in 1948. Mencken had a stroke, which effectively
That left him completely unable to
he
read
couldn't
or write.
speak or write. Eventually, he was
They did
able.
work with him too.
Yeah, yeah, but he said that he actually died in 1948.
That's so sad. I mean, that, you can imagine he had built up his career, a name for himself, a name for this house, and what he loved doing, that he did every day up in his study, at the office, at the papers, he wasn't able to do. He still had thoughts. I was told that he spent a lot of time, he still had his secretaries who, he would sort of just sort out all his papers and documents, and entertain with friends, because he could no longer write for the newspapers, cover stories.
And his brother August took care of him.
Yes.
And they would have friends coming over and engaging Henry, and it actually, let's jump
Took
to
something out of him. But I do want to jump back before we get to those years. I have here an entry from the diary. Since we are talking about Mencken's death, and we all know that he was not a religious person, obviously, but he did admit to subscribing to a couple of superstitions. And just thinking about this house, thinking about his life, Mencken's dad died here, as well as his mom, and obviously his wife died. He had a superstition, or he believed in the superstition, and I think he thought it was funny himself that he even believed in it, about the number 13, and about Friday, to the point that there was an example. I have this book here, And we all know Mencken wrote many publications, obviously, before his stroke, almost 50. He always, I call him a typical guy. He kept track of the words and everything that he wrote. I said he wrote over 5 million words. And he always tried to outdo himself. But in this particular, one of the trilogy books, The Newspaper Days, and also Happy Days and Heathen Days, one of these he noticed had 313 pages. Once he, finished writing the last point of it, and when it got published, he looked, he said, that's 313 pages. That, in the one book, he was okay with that. And then there was another book, The Newspaper Days. And when he finished that one, he noticed, Newspaper Days, the other one was Happy Days. The first one was Happy Days, this one was Newspaper Days, and they both have the exact amount of pages, 313. That bothered him to the point that he was almost ready to take off some pages or change it, but he actually thought in that case it was a good omen. I do want to share this from the diaries. It was from September 14th, 1935, just to talk more about his superstition. I came down from New York yesterday, Friday the 13th, leaving on the 11:30 train, Eastern Standard Time. There is another 13 in 231, this time reversed. I was in car 231. I fully expected the train to roll off the track. Along about Trenton, I encountered Rob Haynes of Winston-Salem, and we sat down for a gabble. This took my mind off the dangers confronting me. He was seriously afraid. And so I got to Baltimore in good spirits and without any material loss of weight. The rest of the day passed calmly and indeed rather comfortably. I began to take an atheistic view of my private theology. He had some doubts there, but he was very nervous on that ride. But when you look back, Mencken's mom, Anna Appow Mencken, she died on the 13th, as well as his dad, and who else? Everyone that died here died on a Friday or a Sunday, which were days he paid a special note to, and also his wife, even though she died on May 31st, he thought about those numbers, the 3 and the 1. So it sort of stuck with him throughout his whole life, and he also made comments in some of his writing about anyone people that did him wrong, his enemies, they tended to die abruptly. So there you have it.
Yeah.
He was a little bit
superstitious.
Yeah.
He wouldn't admit to it, but
he not making anything of it, but he died on a Sunday.
Yes.
Mencken.
Yeah.
He was born on a Sunday too, so there you have it.
Well, on January 28th, which was a Saturday, he was entertaining a friend, Louis Cheswick. But before we... Cheslock, I'm sorry, Cheslock. But we know a lot about that evening because his brother August and Louis Cheslock kept notes. They remembered. And one of the things that Mencken had that evening was shrimp on toast. Now, we did a lot of research, and I contacted a friend of mine, Zenos, who's the owner of the Icaros Creek restaurant in Highlandtown. And he talked to his restaurant friends, he did research, and he said, Jeff, it's very difficult because they didn't find any recipes that was shrimp and toast.
In the 1950s. Right.
So what he did was, and by talking with his fellow restaurateurs, he came up with something that could have been eaten in that time period, and he prepared this for us to show you, shrimp on toast, and he used ingredients that you might find in the everyday household.
Right. That looks really good.
Oh, I
imagine Mencken, his cook, probably whipped him up something. This was for supper that he had,
yes,
so
yes.
It was a light snack. That looks pretty hearty. That looks good. Maybe
Yes.
would have loved that.
Oh, I'm listening to you, and my eyes are leaning over, looking at that. So maybe later we'll have to sample it just to see.
I do want to mention, in case folks there, Louis Cheslock, Dr. Louis Cheslock, He's not a medical doctor, but he was one of the gentlemen in the Saturday night club. And he was the one that lived the longest, and he was the last standing one, but he did die a couple decades ago. But his son is
he and
still,
Henry were very good
his
friends.
son is still around.
Also, during that evening, and we'll talk more about that upstairs, during that evening, August said that Henry had 2 Gibsons, okay?
So my question was, what's a Gibson?
Well, all the people in the restaurant business said, oh, a Gibson, yeah, vermouth and gin, and these are from the collection in the basement belonging to H.L. Mencken, vermouth and gin. So we created 2 Gibsons here so you could see what they look like.
They actually have the pearl onions in there.
Yes, 3 onions. Now,
It's like a martini, but
well, it is a martini, but that doesn't look the least bit, good to me. So I think I'll pass on the Gibsons and stick with the shrimp on toast.
Henry had 2 of those as documented, and a couple of other cocktails.
Yes, and we'll talk about that upstairs. And I think at this point, and you might be wondering about these ivory pieces. Mencken had a collection of ivory. His mom collected ivory, and for some reason his friends thought that he enjoyed ivory and carved figures. You can see some behind us. So they would always bring him pieces of ivory. And I don't think, it was like, what are they doing that for? I don't like ivory. But he was being the gentleman and he accepted them. So these are just 2 pieces. These probably date from possibly the 1860s, 1870s. And they're quite
very
intricate.
extensive collection. I do know Mencken's brother, there was an ongoing prank with them about not necessarily the ivories, but also the wooden figures. Mencken has a huge collection of those. If you ever visit the house, we'll rotate the different artifacts that we have, because there's so many very interesting things. But the wooden figures, people who admired Mencken from all over the world would send him little figurines, and I think his brother sort of put out there that he loved these. So every time someone would visit, they would bring them more.
Yeah.
When in fact, between the 2 brothers, Mencken did not like wooden figurines, so it was sort of an inside joke. But that's why he has an extensive collection of those.
I think we should go upstairs
To the Mencken study.
and we're getting a little bit more serious when we go upstairs. So now this is the part where normally our videographer would take control, but we're going to do that.
Okay, I wonder what time it is.
It is 12:30.
Okay,
We're halfway through.
Okay, did you tell the audience about the time of death for Mencken?
Well,
And why we're doing this at midnight?
well, Mencken, and again, this is one aspect that we're going to talk about again. Depending on which doctor you want to believe, Mencken died January 29th between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. And when he went to bed at 9,
A little bit after 9.
His brother Henry, when he went to bed,
August.
August, he walked by the bedroom
About
on
2
the 3rd
hours,
floor,
about
about
2
2
hours
hours later, around 11 o'clock,
Mhm.
and he heard the breathing,
Yeah, it's
Henry
normal
breathing.
breathing,
Right.
I imagine.
So basically, when we go upstairs, we're going to get down to the timeline, what we know about his last hours, basically what they did.
The sequence of events for that.
And it's the only weird aspect of this is when you look at what happened. Personally, I think Henry knew that his time was.
Yeah, I think some of the when he came down for dinner, some of the dinner conversation with Dr. Cheslock and his brother
So
gave hints of that. So.
Let's not jump ahead now.
Mhm.
But
We're gonna
okay,
go upstairs.
so Sherry's going to take the camera, and I'll meet you upstairs.
Great.
Just bear with us. Hello again. Hello, Sherry, you made it. So,
Wonders of technology.
yes, yes.
Oops. So here we are in Mencken's study, where he spent a lot of his time on this typewriter. He had several typewriters, but this one in particular, doing a lot of what he did best.
And just bear with us a second. There's, you know, we don't want to leave anything out, and we had a lot of notes. And I'm missing a page. Okay, so here's what happened. On January 28th, Henry and August were having dinner. And,
Well, prior to them having dinner,
well, Dr. Cheslock was coming. They knew he was coming.
okay.
What am I leaving something out?
No, I was saying before he went down to supper, he came into the study.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, he took a nap in this room, and you can't see it, but the couch in which he took a nap in is to the left of Sherry. And so,
He listened to a radio broadcast.
right, of Dear Meister,
Die Meistersinger.
yes,
Our German folks out there help us with that.
yes.
We actually have
We're gonna play
a
just
few bars of that.
yeah.
I hope you can hear it. We'll see. It is documented that that was on the radio at the time, and I guess his brother and folks in the house could hear that he was up here reclined on that couch listening. I don't know if he was just tired. I know ever since he had the stroke, little exertion would wear him out. So I don't know if he was just tired from the day's events or just getting a nap before supper.
Okay. The entire piece is like 4 hours long, and he just listened to a portion of it.
That's by Wagner.
Right. So he came downstairs, and that's when.
Around 9 o'clock?
No, that
Before-
was
this is
before
before
that.
9
Yeah,
o'clock.
7. Louis Cheslock got here at 7 o'clock, or 7:30, and he remembered that Henry met him at the door, and Cheslock remembered that he looked disheveled, which was unusual for Henry. I mean, if you look at all the photographs of him in his home, he was always dressed in a tie.
Mhm.
So that was a shock to Cheslock that he looked that disheveled. And he extended his hand to Cheslock to shake it, and that's something he never did before. And he said, Louis, this is the last time you're going to see me. And,
Wow.
and Cheslock sort of went, okay, didn't know what to make of it. So they sat down and they were chatting, and
We were told it was after he got over the sort of complaining, he didn't feel well.
yeah,
They did have sort of a socialite dinner conversation. I don't know
Right.
if they started talking about
Yeah.
politics, but it was a very rigorous
he
conversation
mentioned
throughout
that
dinner.
he wasn't feeling well.
Mhm.
Okay, so he had the 2 Gibsons that you saw downstairs,
Mhm.
and he threw up. He got sick. So then he had 3 more cocktails that we're not sure what they were. He drank them quickly. Then they spent the next 2 hours or so in engaging conversation. They talked about TV announcers, movies, books, and I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall listening to that.
Me too.
Yeah. So, so it was a lively discussion. So at one point, Henry complained about a pain in his chest, and his brother gave him a pink pill. Now, we don't know what that was. It could have been nitroglycerin. We just don't know. So already we're seeing what I believe, I'm not a doctor, and I don't pretend to be one, But I think with that description, we're already seeing that something was going on. That you know, for him to be disheveled and complaining about not feeling good, throwing up, and then complaining about the pain in his chest.
Right.
So
I don't recall who, but I think a couple days before that, there was another occurrence where Mencken said to someone, "Oh, I'll see you Monday," but it was some sort of hint at he wasn't too sure about that.
yeah,
It was another person he was talking
yeah.
to.
So he says goodbye to Cheslock and shakes his hand and says, "This is the last time you're going to see me." Well, that spooked Cheslock. When he went home, he told his wife that it was ominous. You know, he thinks something is going to happen, and she said, "Oh, don't worry about it. You're going to see him next week."
If August heard it, he probably didn't pay too much attention to it either. So.
Right. Of course, you know, we can look back and go, "Well, that's really strange."
Yeah.
And you know, I firmly believe that when someone is dying, I think they know it.
Sort of a sense.
Yeah, and especially with Mencken, with all that was going on, not feeling good, throwing up, chest pains. I think he knew that his time was coming to say to Cheslock twice, "You're not going to see me again."
What's interesting about that, and after he threw up, he said he wasn't feeling well, and then obviously he was going to retire for the evening. And if you know anything about this house, there's a basement, but there are 3 floors, and his bedroom is on the third floor. So even after the conversation, the shrimp, the cocktails that don't feel well, I assume he took his time to walk up to the 3rd floor to get to his bedroom and rest.
So he goes to bed, and his brother August.
He listens to Mozart.
Yeah,
symphony.
on a radio,
Mhm.
and you could hear it. Not now. That would be that would if we're here now, I'm out of here. But his brother mentioned that he heard Mozart, one of the symphonies playing.
And they're really long, so it was probably playing for a good period of time. But then a few hours later, he walked past the bedroom. August.
So when August went to bed, a few hours later, it was 11 o'clock, I believe.
Yes,
a little bit after 11.
Mm-hmm.
He walked by the bedroom and heard his brother breathing.
Like normal sleep breathing.
Yes. Didn't say he was snoring, but just breathing. So August goes to bed, and everything is quiet. So in the morning, the orderly from Johns Hopkins comes over, and he was going to wake him up, dress him, and get him ready for breakfast, and finds that he's not breathing. So he wakes up August, and August calls the doctor. Doctor comes and said that Mencken was deceased. Okay, so
that's believed to be around between the 3 and 5.
Well, depending on who you want to believe, one doctor said between 3 and 4, another one said 4 and 5. So between 3 and 5 is when he passed. So when Dr. Cheslock was called, he rushed out of the house. Now, his son, Barry, still alive, I believe he's 90. And I spoke with him on the phone, just as his mind was just as clear. He says, "I don't remember too much."
It was yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. But he remembers that his dad rushed out of the house, took the family car, and came over here. And that annoyed him because Barry had a toothache. He was in pain. And his car was in the shop.
And it was still bad weather. And
it was sleeting
and snowing the night before.
Yes, the night before during dinner it was raining, and then it started sleeting. So when Cheslock came over in the morning, the weather was bad. It was really bad. So his son Barry was really annoyed because he had to wait until his dad came home to go to the pharmacy to get pain medicine. And it's funny how people remember things. And he didn't have really that much recollections of meeting Mencken. What he heard about Mencken was through his dad. So it's just funny. Yeah, I remember that. I had a toothache. Dad took the car, and I had to wait till he came home. who cares about Mencken? I'm in pain, right?
Right.
You know? So, Henry died sometime in the morning hours. So
So obviously August had to, one, take care of his affairs.
right,
And, throughout the years after the stroke, Henry had made very clear to his family members his wishes after he died. Obviously, he had everything legally set up as far as all of his writings and things like that. Majority of all of his papers and documents went to the Ena Pratt Library, and then also split up amongst several other colleges and universities. But August was loyal to keep generally to Henry, or Harry as he was called, wishes by keeping his death not a big
yeah,
production,
Mencken
not
said,
a religious service. He didn't want it front page news, which ironically the Sun papers and a couple other publications, they did big editorial and they still made front page news.
Right.
The next day it was in the New York Times and in the Sun with the headlines.
Right. Now the funeral home, which handled the viewing, was right down the street on the corner of Gilmore and Holland Street.
That's about 3 doors down.
Yes, they didn't have to go very far. And no one lives there now. I believe it's being renovated. But we have the Sun Papers headline, and this is sad, but the headline is 10 burned to death, 230 hurt in fire here. Apparently there was an oyster supper in a church in Brooklyn, Baltimore, and there was a fire there. 1,175 people there. 10 women were burned, and underneath is the photograph of H.L. Mencken and the story. I wonder if it wasn't for that tragedy, if it would have been headline news.
Henry was right underneath that big headline.
Yes, exactly. Now, I don't have the
New York Times,
yes.
Their publication was a little bit more gritty, the headlines that they had, but I don't know if I have that as well.
Oh, there we go. No, this is.
Well, I mean, that's a small copy of it.
No, this is the Sun Papers. While she's looking, let me read just the opening paragraph.
Yeah, I know.
This is the Sun Papers obituary. H.L. Mencken, 75, dies in Baltimore. Critic of the American scene, succumbs in his sleep, was stricken in 1948. Baltimore, January 29th, Mencken was found dead in bed early today. The 75-year-old author, editor, critic, and newspaperman had lived in retirement since suffering a cerebral hemorrhage in 1948. Between 1910 and the middle 1930s, his works had a strong influence on American thought and letters. He was known as an iconoclast, wit, and denouncer of what he termed Ubis Americanus. In often savage language, he pillared the public figures and the pet beliefs of the era following World War I. As a language expert, Mr. Mencken was renowned for his research and analysis embodied in the American language, published in several editions. His body was found in his home at 1524 Holland Street by Rancho Brown.
So orderly.
Yes. August Mencken, who lived with him, called the family physician, Dr. Joseph E. Muse, who pronounced Mr. Mencken dead. The physician said death apparently due to a coronary occlusion or closing of an artery near the heart had occurred some hours earlier. He said also that Mr. Mencken apparently had died quietly in his sleep. There were no signs that he had fallen or had tried to get up. So he died in his sleep, basically, very peaceful. So,
Right up there, right upstairs.
yeah, right, well, you can't see it, but the third floor. So when August walked by his bedroom, and heard the breathing,
Or
that was
11th.
the last time that someone heard H.L. Mencken before he died. So his wish was to be cremated, and August did keep to Henry's wishes that he didn't want a lot of people at the
He
graveside.
only wanted a few of his old friends. They didn't even announce the name of the funeral home, the mortician's place,
Right.
where they had the gathering, and then they
Right down
the street.
Yeah.
And then they all, the two brothers were in the hearse with the ashes, traveling to Loudon Park Cemetery, where
Right.
he's interred
in West Baltimore.
in
Right.
the family
Wow.
plot, but his ashes were put next
To
to
his wife.
Sarah Hart's.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. So that was the end of H.L. Mencken.
Let me interject here. I do have notes. We didn't have the New York Times verbiage, but you can look that up online. They had a very gritty, in-your-face headline the day after. And also, again, the Sun, I forgot the gentleman's name. His last name is Owens. He did a full-page editorial the day after Mencken died and put it in the paper, despite the fact that Mencken told him he didn't want
Right.
that. But I know the Evening Sun, the next day they had two major headlines, and it basically read, Mencken's death brings tributes from world, was one of them. And the other one was, private funeral plan for Mencken. At Loudon Park, there were only a small group of mourners.
Right.
Lewis and Elise Cheslock, obviously, publisher Albert Knopf, and novelist James McCain, and Mencken's family.
I think Mencken was very happy that at least that aspect of his final wishes was respected. I'm sure if they opened up to the public, the services, that place would have been mobbed. The cars would have been lined up outside, people trying to get in. Even though there were many people that hated Mencken, there were many more that loved him.
Yes.
Yeah.
And even after his death, the folks that didn't like Mencken, they still had a respect for him because he was a powerful journalist. I do want to read this, it's from Carl Bode. Just a quick paragraph. As a matter of fact, the words of the Sun the day after he died are perhaps his best valedictory. Writing of Mencken and his effect on his fellow workers, the Sun said, to those who exerted the effort, even when their product fell short of the ideal, he was sympathetic, helpful, and encouraging. Mencken, helpful and encouraging.
Yes.
To many outsiders who had been scourged by his pen, there were many, I'm sure, he was the embodiment of evil, as their anguished efforts at reprisal showed. But to those of his colleagues who knew that his battle was waged against sham and hypocrisy, and not against individuals as such, he was simple, compassionate, and even humble. In short, a warm, loyal, and understanding friend. We shall not soon see his like again.
And he's right, we haven't. I don't think we'll see someone like H.L. Mencken again.
You may, William Manchester, you may want to read that.
No, we don't, because I don't have it. Okay, no, we don't.
Okay. Well, William Manchester, he spent probably the last year of Mencken's life. He would come visit him, read to him in
On
the
a regular
garden.
basis.
He was an admirer of Mencken, and he wrote some wonderful words about Mencken. He mentions obviously Mencken was cremated, and he feels he felt that was a mistake, that he should have been rolled in malleable gold and polished to blind the cosmos, I think was one of his last famous words about Mencken, and he really had a heart for Mencken, and so do many fans around the world.
What a friend Manchester was to come here on a regular basis.
After Mencken's career was almost over,
And
pretty much
just
over.
sit with him in the garden, talking, sometimes not talking, And for someone who had a stroke, not me, but I know someone who had a stroke, that companionship meant a lot, because when you're sitting there and you can't move or you can't speak and you're just sitting there, that is hell.
And when Manchester wrote those words after Mencken died, you know, and reflected on it, he even had a stroke, and he was an elderly gentleman, and he sort of was just reminiscing and remembering Mencken. And
It's like if I ever had the chance to meet Manchester, I would shake his hand and say, you were a true friend who tendered Mencken and gave him comfort, and during his terrible years of following the stroke. So now, before we end, and I think we're almost to that point, I want to read a small portion from Mencken, the American Iconoclast, The Life and Times of the Bad Boy of Baltimore by Marion Elizabeth Rogers. And this sums it up, and it's very touching.
Marion has some great books. This is the one to get.
Yeah.
First.
And she has been a good friend to the Mencken house. So I just want to read a little bit. The evening progressed as if nothing untoward had happened. The men spoke about music, television announcers, and the forthcoming minority report. To the delight of all three, a crank had already written to denounce it before its publication. At one point, Mencken complained about a pain in his chest, and August handed him a pink pill. At 9, he went upstairs. Before doing so, he briefly shook Cheslock's hand and repeated, "Louis, this is the last you'll see me." Cheslock left shortly after. Outside, the weather was raw, with rain eventually turning to sleet. When he reached his house, Cheslock told his wife that he had an ominous feeling about Mencken. "Don't say that. You'll be there next week." The Mencken household retired at 9:15. On Mencken's bedside table was a glass of water and his night pills. To his right, within easy reach, was his radio. The strains of music could be heard. It was Mozart. Long ago, on hearing the music of this composer, Mencken had mused that the only permanent values in the world were truth and beauty. This and only this, he believed, was the heritage of man. They were things he had fought for all his life. The symphony had played until 10 that evening. Silence descended on the house and the city. And then, sometime later, long after the last chord of music had registered itself upon H.L. Mencken, a gray light shone upon the icy rooftops as the sun rose over Baltimore.
Wow.
You know, very well said, Marion. Very well said. So.
Oh, it's gotten heavy.
Yeah, I know. Whoa. I just got chills.
Okay.
Yeah, oh, that was weird. That was weird. I'm sorry.
It's very moving sitting in his study. We're using different chairs, but his chair is here with his clothing. We can just get a sense of the time he used to spend in here. Just seeing a few things on the desk, his cigars, which just to lighten up the mood. Here, I'm not sure if you can see this. This is some Cubano Havanas. I was reading on Mencken, and it said that he used to smoke those. You know, he liked the finer things in life, but for to chew on and just for guests, he used the cheaper, what is it, Uncle Willie's? Yeah, Uncle Willie's.
Uncle Willie's.
And there's also stories about him with the wine. He had, cheap Maryland wine, and it was told that he got his friends to make fancy German labels and put on the bottle. So he just sounds like a fun guy. I mean, he did like the finer things, but he also had a realistic part to him too.
Well, you know, before we thank all the people that helped us, I think we should have
I was wondering what the beer sitting there,
we should
the
have
German beer.
Maybe a toast. So let's open up a bottle of good German
After all,
beer.
it's January 29th.
And I'm kind of thirsty. It's very
To
dry
make
in
this
here.
memory.
Yes, it's you know, so we need. It's for you.
Speaking of, alcoholic beverages, you all probably don't know, but Jeff has a drink at one of the local restaurants named after him, and it gave me an idea of possibly, I think the restaurants around here, whether it's Icaros or some of the local restaurants, should come up with a cocktail or a drink for Mencken.
For Mencken, yeah.
I wonder what it would be.
Yeah. So,
Beer? I don't know.
well, here's to you for joining us and putting up with us this hour.
Yes.
And we appreciate it. And here's to H.L. Mencken.
Also known as Harry.
Yes. Not bad, not bad. So, at this point, we would like to thank a number of people. And if I leave anyone out, tell me.
We're not going to leave anyone
Right.
out, and then don't forget
Okay.
about the Grace.
Right. We want to thank Mary Elizabeth Rogers,
Oh, absolutely.
a well-respected Mencken scholar.
Mhm.
Vince Fitzpatrick, he is the curator of the H.L. Mencken room at the Pratt.
Yes, when they're open, you got to see it. It's
Right.
one extensive collection.
These two people have encouraged us, helped us, and whenever we would have a question, we would send them an email, a response right away.
Mhm. They're a wealth of knowledge.
Right. And they thought this was the greatest idea, and so we thank them for their support.
And we thank I know you have others to thank, but we also thank the Mencken fans, the ones that are up late
Yes,
watching us,
yes.
but also, you're what is helping keep Mencken's legacy alive. It was a profound impact during his lifetime, but, in colleges across the world, in small groups, obviously on social media, people are still studying his works, the American language and others. He has definitely survived the test of time.
Yes. I want to thank Zenos, my friend, who's the owner of Icaros Restaurant, who prepares the
Zenos big
shrimp on toast,
Uh-huh.
and he did a very good job of it. And I can't wait. I shouldn't say I can't wait that this is over so I can go down and taste it, but I can't wait to taste that shrimp.
You don't
on
know
toast.
this, but Jeff and I have a joke between us. We did the Mencken Minutes on the Menckeniana
Yeah.
shrimp lexicon, that tough word. We sometimes say shrimp lexicon. I think of Zenos and those big shrimp.
So I'm glad Mencken had shrimp on toast. So, so thank you, Zenos and Icaros
Thank you.
Restaurant.
Henry.
Yes, and I want to thank Sarah Littlepage
Yes.
and Betsy Waters, both members of the board.
Mhm.
They helped us with the china and glassware
Oh yeah, very very
And-
fine cocktail,
yes.
vintage cocktail glasses.
from the 1950s.
Mhm.
So thank you for your support. Also, I would like to thank the Barry Cheswick, Cheslock,
Mhm.
the son of Louis Cheslock. Like I said, the guy's 90, and his mind, other than not remembering certain things about Mencken, it's just as clear. And I
Must have been a really bad toothache. He
I
remembered
know.
it from all those
Yes,
years. I'm
and-
glad he did. It helps give us
and
insight.
he sounded. I thought I was talking to someone who was 40 years old. He sounded that
Oh,
young.
okay,
So
good.
thank you, Barry. We appreciate that. And let's see, who else
We do thank our board president for
Oh,
allowing us to utilize
yes.
this night at the museum and to do this.
Yes,
Share with you.
yes, Brigitte Fessenden.
Mm-hmm.
And thank goodness the members of the board have vision. They see something like this as a way of reaching out and keeping you informed and letting you know that although we're not open, we are still here. We are moving straight ahead.
Mhm.
I mean, we are alive and well.
We have a lot of exciting things
Yes.
to share with you as time goes on. You have to when we're open, you do have to visit the house multiple times because again, we'll rotate a lot of exhibits. Hopefully next time with the technology. Unfortunately, we can't see your comments or questions now because we don't have our technology here. But maybe on the next one, we'll be able to interact with you or engage, and you can
And-
ask some questions.
And I want you to know, putting this together was difficult because we had so much information and we would go back and forth. Well, we have to say this. She would say, no, that's
We
too
still
long.
forgot paperwork.
Then she would say, well, we have to say this. So this was difficult putting it together. But it's a learning experience. And I hope you overlook the steady cam coming up to the second floor.
Not so steady.
Right. So we're going to continue doing live events and
Saturday,
virtual.
isn't that
As a matter of fact, this Saturday at 1 o'clock, we will be at the grave of H.L. Mencken at the Mencken family plot in Loudon Park Cemetery, live for a brief visit. And
Wreath laying.
yes, we're going to lay a
Beautiful
wreath on the
arrangement.
grave of Mencken, and we're going to read a few tributes to Mencken. Now, this is not open to the public, I'm sorry. It is virtual at 1 o'clock, and next January, I'm sure this pandemic will be over with, then we can invite people to join us. So,
But if you would like to send us maybe a tribute of your own, feel free to
sure.
message us on Facebook or email us at info@menckenhouse.org.
Right.
We'd
And
love to share it.
I think we did it. We pulled it through, and I hope
So
you
I'm not
enjoyed it.
not sure what time it is, but I know we'll be signing off.
Well, we are right on schedule because it is 5 minutes. We're 5 minutes
Okay,
late.
we're a
5
little
after
bit
1.
late, so
I'm running at the mouth here.
I don't know if we say good night or good morning.
I don't know what it is. So thank you again for joining us. We really do appreciate you staying up late to watch this. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you. Well, we'll see you Saturday at 1 o'clock, and then you'll see us again for future Mencken Minutes.
Yes, we got
And
some stuff
one's
coming up in
one's
February.
coming up in February for Valentine's Day. So at this point, Sherry will turn off the camera. Thank you again, and we'll see you soon.